I swear I wasn't trying to start anything. We were all just sitting around Maya's living room on a random Friday night, half drunk on cheap wine, and the kind of laughter that only happens when nobody has anywhere else to be. There were maybe 8 of us sprawled across her couch and floor, playing those stupid party games you find on Instagram. Truth or dare for adults. Kiss, marry, kill. You know the drill. Maya had just finished reading some ridiculous challenge off her phone when she looked up with that mischievous grin she gets when she's about to cause chaos. Okay, I got one, she announced, waving her phone around. The couple who can hold eye contact the longest wins. Everyone groaned, but in that good-natured way where you know people are actually into it. Someone suggested we make it a competition between all the couples in the room. There were 3, technically. Maya and her boyfriend Derek, my friend Josh and his girlfriend Sarah, and then there was me and Connor. Except we weren't a couple. Not even close. Connor was my roommate's older brother. He'd been crashing on our couch for the past 2 weeks, while he looked for an apartment in Seattle. I barely knew him beyond the fact that he made really good coffee in the morning and had this annoying habit of leaving his running shoes right in the middle of the hallway, where I'd trip over them in the dark. He was attractive. Sure. Dark hair that always looked like he'd just woken up, even at 8 p.m. Green eyes that had this way of making you feel like he was actually listening when you talked, which was rare. I'm tall enough that I had to tilt my head back slightly when we spoke, but I hadn't really thought about him like that. Or at least, I'd been trying not to. Wait, hold on, Josh said, pointing at me and Connor. They're not even together. Maya's grin got wider. Doesn't matter. They're sitting next to each other. They're in. I felt my face get hot. Connor was sitting on the floor, next to where I'd claimed the end of the couch, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something woodsy and clean. He'd been quiet most of the night, just listening to everyone else's stories, with this slight smile on his face. I'm good, I said quickly, reaching for my wine glass. I'll sit this one out. Come on, Liv, Sarah called out. Don't be boring. Yeah, Liv, Connor said. And when I looked down at him, he was looking right at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. Don't be boring. There was something in his voice, a challenge maybe. Or was I imagining it? My heart did this stupid flutter thing that I immediately tried to ignore. Fine, I heard myself say. But when we lose in like 5 seconds, I'm blaming you. Connor shifted so he was facing me fully, crossing his legs. You want to compete with me? The way he said it made something twist in my stomach. His tone was light, teasing, but his eyes had gone serious, dark. Like he'd just dared me to something way bigger than a stupid party game. I mean, yeah, I said, trying to sound casual even though my pulse was suddenly doing double time. That's kind of the point, right? Maya was already setting a timer on her phone. Okay, rules are simple. You can't laugh. You can't look away. You can't blink excessively. First person to break loses. Ready? I wasn't ready. Not even a little bit. But I nodded anyway, and Connor leaned back against the couch, tilting his head slightly as he looked up at me. The room got quiet. Someone dimmed the lights a little, and suddenly it felt way more intimate than it had any right to. Go, Maya shouted. And just like that, I was locked in. Connor's eyes were greener than I'd realized. Not just green, but this deep forest color with these tiny flecks of gold near the center. I'd never been this close to his face before, never really looked at him straight on like this. There was a small scar above his left eyebrow that I'd never noticed, a tiny freckle on his cheekbone. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. He didn't blink, didn't smile. Just held my gaze with this intensity that made my skin feel too tight. Around us, I was vaguely aware of the other couples starting their own contests. Maya was already giggling at Derek. Josh and Sarah were making faces at each other, trying to crack first. But I couldn't focus on any of that. All I could see was Connor. 30 seconds in, my eyes started to water a little. I wanted to blink so badly. But something about the way he was looking at me made it impossible to look away. Like if I did, I'd miss something important. His jaw was tight. He was barely breathing. Was he feeling this too? This weird electric current that seemed to be humming between us? 1 minute passed. Maya called it out, her voice distant. Connor's lips parted slightly, like he was about to say something. But he didn't. He just kept staring. And I felt like I was falling into something I didn't understand. My hands were shaking. I'd tucked them under my thighs to hide it, but I could feel the tremor running through my whole body. This was just a game, just a stupid party game. So why did it feel like something was shifting? Like the air between us had changed into something heavier, something that pressed against my chest and made it hard to breathe? 2 minutes. The other couples had all dropped out. Maya and Derek first, then Josh and Sarah. Everyone was watching us now. I could feel their eyes, could hear someone whisper, "Holy shit," under their breath. But I couldn't look away from Connor. There was something in his expression now, something raw. His eyes had darkened, pupils blown wide, and I realized with a jolt that he wasn't just looking at me. He was seeing me, really seeing me, in a way that made me feel completely naked even though I was fully clothed. Like every wall I'd ever put up was transparent to him. Like he could read every thought I'd ever tried to hide. My breath hitched. His eyes flicked down to my mouth for just a fraction of a second before coming back up. It was so quick I almost missed it. But I didn't miss it. And from the way his fingers had curled into fists against his thighs, I knew he knew I'd seen it. 10 minutes. My eyes were burning now, tears threatening to spill over. But I couldn't stop. Wouldn't stop. Because something was happening here. Something I wasn't ready to name. And if I looked away, it might disappear forever. Connor's chest was rising and falling faster now. I could see his pulse jumping in his throat. Could see the muscle in his jaw tick as he clenched his teeth. "You guys okay?" Maya asked, but her voice sounded concerned now instead of entertained. "You can stop anytime." Neither of us responded. I felt like I was drowning, like Connor was pulling me under with just his eyes, and I was letting him, wanting him to. When had this happened? When had my roommate's brother become this person who could unravel me with a look? 4 minutes? Someone in the room laughed nervously. And then Connor did something that changed everything. He smiled. Not his usual polite smile, or the one he gave when someone told a joke. This was different. Slower. Almost predatory. His eyes crinkled slightly at the corners, but they never left mine. And in that smile, I saw everything. The wanting, the restraint, the same desperate confusion I was feeling. He wanted me too. The realization hit me like a physical thing, stealing what little breath I had left. My whole body flushed hot, and I knew he could see it. Could see the way my cheeks flamed, the way my lips parted in surprise. His smile widened just a fraction. And that's when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I barely registered it at first, too lost in Connor's eyes. But then it buzzed again. And again. Rapid fire, the way it only did when something was wrong. My mom's ringtone started playing. I broke. My eyes flicked down to my pocket for just a second. And by the time I looked back up, Connor was already moving, standing, stepping back, creating distance. "Connor wins," Maya announced, but her voice sounded far away. I fumbled for my phone with shaking hands, my heart still racing. 3 missed calls from my mom, 5 texts. My stomach dropped. The room suddenly felt too small, too hot. Everyone was congratulating Connor, laughing about how intense that was. But all I could think about was my phone, and the way Connor was very carefully not looking at me anymore. I opened the texts. "Call me." Now, it's about your dad." The world tilted sideways. I stood up too fast, nearly tripping over Connor's shoes. Those stupid running shoes. I needed to call her back, needed to find somewhere quiet, needed to breathe. "Liv?" Maya's voice, worried now. But I was already moving toward the door, phone pressed to my ear as it rang. And behind me, I felt Connor's eyes on my back, burning like a brand. My mom picked up on the first ring. "Olivia, thank God." Her voice was tight, strained in a way that made my chest constrict. "Your father's in the hospital. He had a heart attack about an hour ago." The hallway outside Maya's apartment tilted. I pressed my free hand against the wall, trying to steady myself. "Is he okay?" "Mom, he's stable. They got him in quickly. But honey, you need to come home." Home was Portland, a 3-hour drive from Seattle. I was supposed to visit next weekend for my dad's birthday, had already bought him a new fishing rod that was sitting in my closet. "I'm leaving now," I said, my voice sounding strange and distant to my own ears. "I'll be there as soon as I can." I ended the call and just stood there for a second, staring at Maya's ugly hallway carpet. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. My dad, who ran 5 miles every morning and ate salads for lunch and never missed his annual checkup. My dad, who'd taught me to ride a bike and change a tire and always answered the phone when I called, no matter what time it was. The apartment door opened behind me. "Liv." Connor's voice was soft. Careful. I didn't turn around. Couldn't. If I looked at him right now, I'd fall apart, and I needed to hold it together, needed to get home. "I have to go," I said. "My dad. I heard." He was closer now. I could feel the warmth of him behind me. "You can't drive like this." "I'm fine." "You're shaking." He was right. My whole body was trembling, adrenaline and fear mixing into something that made my knees feel weak. "Connor, I have to." "I know." His hand touched my elbow, gentle, grounding. "Let me drive you." I finally turned to look at him. His face was serious, no trace of that dangerous smile from before. Just concern. Real, a genuine concern that made something in my chest crack open. "You don't have to do that," I whispered. "I know I don't have to." His fingers tightened slightly on my arm. "I want to. Please, Liv. Let me help." I should have said no, should have insisted I was fine, that I could handle it. But the truth was, I was terrified. Terrified of driving 3 hours alone with my thoughts. Terrified of what I might find when I got to the hospital. Terrified of everything that had just happened in that living room and what it meant. "Okay," I breathed. We moved fast after that. Connor grabbed his keys while I told Maya what was happening. She hugged me tight, made me promise to text her updates. I barely registered the sympathetic looks from everyone else. Couldn't focus on anything except the need to move, to go, to get to my dad. Connor's car was older, a beat-up Honda that smelled like coffee in winter. I climbed into the passenger seat while he adjusted the mirrors, and then we were pulling out onto the dark Seattle streets, heading south. For the first 20 minutes, neither of us spoke. Connor just drove, his hand steady on the wheel, while I stared out the window and tried not to think about all the worst-case scenarios running through my head. "He's going to be okay," Connor said quietly, breaking the silence. "You don't know that." "No," he admitted. "But I know your dad's tough. You've told me stories. The guy who survived a camping trip with 3 teenage girls, he can survive this." Despite everything, I felt my lips twitch. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close. "That camping trip almost killed him." "Exactly. He's been training for this." I looked over at him, his profile in the dashboard light, jaw set with concentration as he navigated onto the highway. He was trying to distract me, to make this bearable. "Thank you," I said softly, "for doing this." Connor glanced at me, and for just a second, I saw something flash in his eyes. Something that reminded me of the living room, of 4 minutes of eye contact that had felt like drowning and flying at the same time. "Any time, Liv," he said, his voice rough. "I mean that." My phone buzzed. A text from my mom with the hospital name and room number. Another wave of anxiety crashed over me, and without thinking, I reached out and grabbed Connor's hand, where it rested on the center console. He went completely still. I should have pulled back, should have apologized, but his hand was warm and solid and real, and I desperately needed something to anchor me. Slowly, carefully, Connor turned his palm up and laced his fingers through mine. And then he squeezed. Once, twice, 3 times. A silent promise in the dark. We didn't let go. For 2.5 hours, Connor drove one-handed while his other hand stayed locked with mine. I watched the highway lights streak past, watched the mile markers count down, and tried not to think about how perfectly his fingers fit between mine. My mom called again around midnight. Dad was out of surgery. They'd put in 2 stents. The doctors were optimistic. He was asking for me. I cried then. Just let the tears come while Connor's thumb traced small circles on the back of my hand, and he pretended not to notice. "Con almost there," he murmured when I finally got myself together. 15 more minutes. The hospital parking lot was nearly empty when we pulled in. Connor found a spot near the entrance and killed the engine, but neither of us moved. His hand was still holding mine. "You should go," he said quietly, but he didn't let go either. I looked down at our intertwined fingers, tried to remember why this was a bad idea, why I shouldn't be feeling what I was feeling for a guy I barely knew in the middle of the worst night of my life. "Connor," I started, not even sure what I was going to say. He turned to face me fully, and in the harsh fluorescent glow of the parking lot lights, his eyes looked almost gray. Serious, intense in a completely different way than they'd been at Maya's apartment. "Go see your dad," he said. "I'll be right here when you're done. You don't have to wait. It could be hours." "I'll be right here," he repeated, and something about the way he said it made my throat tight. I nodded and finally, reluctantly, pulled my hand from his. The loss of contact felt physical. Wrong. I pushed open the car door and stepped out into the cold Portland night. Took 3 steps toward the hospital entrance before I stopped. Before I could talk myself out of it, I turned back. Connor had already gotten out of the car, like he'd known I would come back, like he'd been waiting for it. I didn't let myself think, just closed the distance between us and wrapped my arms around him. He caught me instantly, his arms coming around my waist and pulling me close. Solid. Safe. I pressed my face into his chest and breathed him in, while the clean, woodsy smell that I'd been trying not to notice for 2 weeks. "Thank you," I whispered against his shirt. His arms tightened. I felt his chin rest on top of my head, felt his heartbeat against my cheek, racing just as fast as mine. "Liv," he said, so quiet I almost didn't hear it. I tilted my head back to look at him, and the expression on his face made my breath catch. He looked torn, conflicted, like he was holding himself back from something with every ounce of willpower he had. His hand came up, fingers brushing a strand of hair away from my face. The touch was feather light, but it burned. "Go," he said again, but his voice was rougher now, strained. "Before I do something really stupid." I should have asked what he meant, should have pulled away. Instead, I stood on my tiptoes and kissed his cheek. Just a quick press of my lips against his skin, there and gone. But when I pulled back, Connor's eyes had gone dark. Dangerous. His hand moved to cup my jaw, thumb brushing across my cheekbone. We were frozen there, inches apart, both of us barely breathing. "Liv," he whispered, and it sounded like a warning and a prayer all at once. The hospital's automatic doors whooshed open behind us. A nurse walked out, fumbling with her car keys. The spell broke. I stepped back. Connor's hand fell away. Yeah. I turned and walked toward the entrance, forcing myself not to look back, but I felt his eyes on me the entire way. My dad looked smaller in the hospital bed than I'd ever seen him, paler. But when I walked into the room, his eyes opened, and he smiled that same crooked smile he'd had my whole life. "There's my girl," he said, his voice hoarse. I spent the next 4 hours at his bedside, held his hand while he drifted in and out of sleep, talked to the cardiologist about recovery and lifestyle changes, sat with my mom while she cried, and told me how scared she'd been. The sun was just starting to rise when my mom finally convinced me to take a break, to get some air, to check on my friend who'd driven me all this way. Connor was exactly where he'd said he'd be. He was asleep in the driver's seat, head tilted back, arms crossed over his chest. Someone had parked right next to him, and he'd had to move to the far corner of the lot. But he was still there, waiting. I knocked softly on the window. His eyes opened immediately, alert. The second he saw me, he was out of the car. "Your dad?" "He's okay. He's going to be okay." The relief on Connor's face was so genuine, it made my chest ache. "Thank God. You stayed. I told you I would." We stood there in the pink dawn light, looking at each other across the hood of his car. I was exhausted, emotionally wrung out, still terrified about my dad, even though the doctors had been reassuring. But looking at Connor, all I could think about was 4 minutes of eye contact, and the way his hand had felt in mine for 2.5 hours. "I should probably get you back to Seattle," he said, but he didn't move. "Connor." I walked around the car until I was standing right in front of him. "Last night, in the apartment, that wasn't just a game. It wasn't a question." His jaw tightened. "No, it wasn't." "And in the car, Liv." He ran a hand through his messy hair, and I realized he looked as wrecked as I felt. "You just went through hell. Your dad almost died. This isn't the time to what? To tell you that I haven't been able to stop thinking about you for the past week? That I've been trying really hard to pretend I don't notice when you smile at me over coffee, or when you leave your shoes in the hallway, because it means you're still there?" His eyes widened. "You trip over those shoes every single day." "I know." I took another step closer. "And every single time I think about you." Connor's breathing had gone shallow. "You're tired. You're not thinking straight." I've never been more clear-headed in my life. I reached up and put my hand on his chest, felt his heart hammering beneath my palm. "You drove 3 hours in the middle of the night for me. But you waited in a parking lot for 4 hours. You held my hand the entire way here. Anyone would have." "No." I cut him off. "They wouldn't have. You did." His hand came up to cover mine on his chest. "What are you saying, Liv?" "I'm saying I don't want to pretend anymore. I'm saying that when you looked at me last night, I felt more in 4 minutes than I've felt in 4 years. I'm saying—" He kissed me. Just pulled me in and kissed me like he'd been holding back for 1,000 years, and finally couldn't anymore. His hands cupped my face, and his lips were soft and urgent and perfect, and I kissed him back like my life depended on it. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. His forehead rested against mine. "I'm saying that too," he whispered. I laughed, and it felt like the first real breath I'd taken since my mom's call. "Yeah? Yeah." He kissed me again, softer this time, sweeter. "But I'm also saying we're doing this right. Dinner. An actual date. Not just when I'm crashing on your couch." "You're staying on the couch?" Connor grinned. "For now? But Liv." "Yeah? I'm competing with you on everything from now on." And this time, when he looked at me with those green eyes, I didn't look away. I never wanted to look away again.